Hello, Comedic family, and welcome back to my channel. First off, I would like to take a moment to thank all of you that have liked, shared, and subscribed to my videos. I really appreciate the love and encouragement that you've extended my way, and I am just exceedingly excited to go on this journey with you, for you to be part of my journey and participate and just share in the content that I am bringing forth. So, without further ado, I will hop right into what this video is going to be about, and that is the event that I spoke about in the introduction video, which was the physical death of one of my children. Throughout this video, I will be referring to my children as son 1, 2, and 3. I do have 3 different sons, just so that I could, give clarity to who it is that I'm talking about, so no one gets lost. So we will continue. So this journey of mine actually began well before the physical death of my son. I would say it was about years ago, just becoming the observer of my life. I can just remember different instances where my inner being was speaking to me and just being my guidance system and just showing me which way to go. So fast forward to, I'd say, probably about last year, I had become stronger, in my ability to listen to my inner being, but it had grown stagnant to an extent. So I could feel it just like I said in the introduction video, I felt like something was missing about a year ago. And I didn't know what it was. It was my soul just like, I need something more. It was time to elevate. It was time to go to the next level. And I didn't know what it was I needed to do. I knew how to meditate. I knew how to just get quiet and, just really tap in. But for whatever reason, it just wasn't becoming as clear as I needed it to be. And so, like I said, this time last year, again in the introduction video, I mentioned waking up at about 3 o'clock in the morning and thinking about Nipsey Hussle's mother and the eulogy that she gave at her son's service. So those of you that know who Nipsey Hussle is, you know that he passed away at the beginning of 2019. I did watch it back then and, was just so impressed with how his mother conducted herself during her son's service. But fast forward to September 2020, why I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and think about that particular instance was unbeknownst to me. I had no idea, why that was what came to mind, but my inner being did. And so I got up, I watched it again, and was just as taken back as I was, back then at how she got through the service, how she was just so composed and elegant. And I was just like, wow, and during her time that she was speaking, she spoke about African spirituality. And so I Googled it, and what came up was Comedic Centered Living. And those were the tools that began to fine tune my ability to tap into my higher being and my guidance system. And so for the next 6 months, that's what I was doing. I was researching and reading and just really implementing the different practices and tools in my own life. I'm the type of person that somebody can tell me something, but I have to dig and I have to research to apply it to my own life and find my truth. And I couldn't get enough of it. It was just like, this is exactly what I needed. And, just in different situations, my manifestations and everything, it was showing up in my life. And so I knew that I was on the right path, and I just felt so much clarity and was just continuing to move forward with the content that I was being given. So fast forward about 6 months later, that is when my son passed. And on this particular day, I was just really putting together some content for a website of mine that I was creating. And I, out of nowhere, just heard, my inner being speak very loud and clear. Now, leading up to this day, I'd say probably about 2 weeks before, there were other just little situations that happened where she was speaking to me, and I listened to what it was that she was saying to do. And it was nothing serious. It was just small. And I was like, okay, I like the outcome of that. And just in previous years, just being younger, Back then I would have referred to it as God, and I'd say, oh, I think God told me to do something and I don't want to, and I'm not going to do that. And I did not like the outcome. So by this time I knew, to follow my inner guidance system, my inner goddess, because she's never steered me wrong, and being able again to be the observer and look back at my life in just different situations, listening to that small, still voice, I've always been guided to where I needed to be. So this day, I'm, like I said, working on content, and I hear her loud and clear, and she tells me, you need to get up and go to son number two's house. So I was going to go over there anyways later on in the day, because son number 1 and 3 were there, and I needed to pick him up. It was a school night. He'd stay the night at his brother's house, but it would have been later in the day. So when I was hearing this, to get up and go now, it was like 1 in the afternoon. And so I got up and I said, okay, I'm gonna go. I wanted to pick up a few items to prepare dinner that night. And so I was like, well, I'm just gonna stop and pick these items up. And my inner being spoke again, and she said, no, you need to get up and you need to go straight over there. Just go straight. Don't pass go. Don't collect $200. Like, go straight over there. And so I said, okay. So I did. Now, once I got there, again, I'm just thinking, like, I have stuff to do. I'm just going to call him downstairs and I'm going to go. And my inner being spoke again, and she said, no, you need to park and you need to go up the stairs. So I said, okay. So I do exactly that, and I walked to his stairs. He lived on the 3rd floor. So I walked to his stairs, and once I get there, son number 2 is standing at the top of those stairs. And he is on the phone. He's having a conversation with his mentor, and he has this big, beautiful smile on his face. He's so excited. And as he always did, when he was physically living, anytime we would meet up, or he would come to my house, or I'd go to his house, he would greet me with a hug. And before he would leave, he would hug me again. And so he's coming down the stairs, I'm going up the stairs, and we stop and we hug, and it was just, nice. And I hear his conversation, and I'm like, wait a minute, do you not see my hair? I had changed my hairstyle. And he started laughing. He's like, yeah, Mom. He's like, you look good. You look straight. And he gives me this big thumbs up, and I can just, remember his big, beautiful smile. So, like I said, we hug, and he goes on about his business. He's, just having a conversation, goes down the stairs, and I go up the stairs. So once I get there, him and his fiance were expecting a little one. And so I get in there, and I'm talking to her about, just shopping and stuff. And we're in the back room. And all of a sudden, we hear this horrible scream. And we look out of the room, and son number 1 and son number 3 are running out of the room, or out of the apartment. So we don't know what's happening, but we're just running behind them. And so we get to the parking lot, and when we get to the bottom of the stairs, son number 1 falls to his knees, and he is yelling his brother's name. And so I'm just looking at him like, he was just right here. It was like 3 minutes ago. I just saw him. He's fine. Like, what are you talking about? And he let me know that the mentor that son number 2 was on the phone with called him and said that he heard something, and he thought that son number 2 was hurt. So once he told me that, I'm an action person. All I knew was go look for him. So I jump in my car, and I just begin to drive around his apartments, just thinking, if he's hurt, I'm gonna see him and I can get him help. And I didn't find him. And so came on back to the area that he lived in. And son number 1 and 3 were just like, okay, well, we have each other's location, so let's track his phone. So I was like, that's a great idea. Let's go ahead and track his phone. So we did. I left, didn't say anything to the police, just I left, and I called them to let them know what I was doing. So we get over there, and we don't pinpoint the phone, but we just know like it's in this area. So I'm just thinking, okay, somebody has him, we're gonna find him. And so the police come, and they're knocking on doors, and I'm walking around with them, and I'm just trying to look out for anything, just anything that I see that I feel like is unordinary. And nothing's happening. So all of a sudden, I'm staring at my phone and I see his phone move. And so I look in the direction and I'm telling them, I saw it, he's over here, I saw it move. And they let me know well, that doesn't mean that it was him moving the phone. It could have just been, bouncing off of a tower. And that turned out to be what it was. But they were able to kind of hone in a little bit more quicker and walk right over to his phone. And it was laying there in the grass. And so at that point, obviously my son's not with his phone. We had to just go back to his place and just answer a lot of questions, and that's all we could do at the moment. So fast forward, it was drizzling that day, but by the time I got home, it was pouring down rain, and that's the heaviest that I can ever remember it raining, and I've lived in this area for a decade. And so, it's just the pitter patter on my window. It's midnight and everything is just so prevalent, when it comes to paying attention to water. And I just keep thinking water, water, water. And I'm just like, there's a lake over here. And I walk to my window and I just say, tell mama where you're at so that I can bring you home. And, just standing there, I hear a name of a lake that's over there. And so this particular lake is a very large lake. It runs through 3 different cities in this area. And so when I heard the name of that lake, I remembered that son number 2 and I had sat there before and just shot the breeze, just talked about life and, nothing out of the ordinary, just chilling. And so that was the first thing that came to mind. And I just said, okay, I was like, all right, I didn't know what else to do with that. And I went to sleep. And even thinking back, how could one go to sleep with everything going on? I just had this peace. And I was able to just fall asleep without any problem. So the next morning I woke up and I felt like I was in a bit of denial. Like, this didn't just happen. Like, he's fine. But then, as I was up, I was just like, okay, no, it did happen. I'm gonna go look for him. Because again, all I know to do is to do something. Just sitting there waiting was just not, it's never been my thing. I always feel like I need to take action. And so I get up and I put on my clothes and I get all the way to my garage and I'm getting in my car and I realize you don't know where you're going. And I'm like, oh. So I go back in the house and I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna start calling hospitals to see if anybody has seen him, if anybody knows where he's at. And so that's what I end up doing. And I decided, okay, well, let me call the detectives to see what it is that they're doing. So I call them and they let me know that they're doing the same thing. Nothing's coming up, but they did have someone in custody. So I said, okay. I started asking questions and they couldn't give me a whole lot of information just because it was really early in the stages of everything. And so now all I can do is sit there and wait. And so that was the longest day ever, just not hearing anything. Later on, they called towards the evening and just said, where they ended up picking this person up. And, that was pretty much it. So I said, okay. So where my son lived and where they picked this person up was about an hour away. And so they're, calling several different hospitals. I think they had named about 32, said it was about 32 that they had checked to try to find him. And so, again, we're just waiting. And so that night, I'm sitting there in silence and I hear my body hurts all over. And I just closed my eyes. A couple tears fell. And I said, okay, go ahead and go. And went to sleep. Again, very peaceful, went to sleep. So this is now a Tuesday. And I wake up and it's 3 o'clock in the morning. And when I get up, it's almost like I was still asleep, but not. I put on my robe, I put on my shoes, grabbed my purse, knocked on son number 3's door, and I said, let's go. We're gonna go find your brother. So we get in the car, and at this time, I can't feel him as strong as I felt him before. So I ended up driving over to his apartment, and I realized the reason that I was doing that was because I was trying to pick up his energy. He, lived there, and so he spent a lot of time there. And so I felt like being there, I could pick him up again. So I sat beside his car for probably about 20 minutes. And then when I felt like, okay, I can feel him, what I heard was drive over to where his phone was. So I do. And I sit there for probably about 10 minutes. And what came to my next, I heard drive forward, go straight. I've never been in this neighborhood before, I've never been on the street, but I listen to this voice and I drive straight. Surely enough, when I get to the end of that street, it's like a cul-de-sac area, it dead ends. And there's a field and there is water, like it's a lake, and it's leading up to that area. So I took a deep breath and I said, okay, I'm going to come back in the morning, but I could feel that he'd been, in that area. So I start driving out of the area, and I'm just driving really slow. And I hear, I'm here. And I said, okay. And I look at son number 3 and I just say, hey, your brother's here. And so he said, okay. I said, I'm gonna come back in the morning. So go ahead, drive home. And when I wake up the next day, it's about 9 o'clock. I've got lots of missed calls and text messages by this time. The news has aired my son as missing. So, just getting the word out. So if anyone's seen him, they can let them know. And so I had probably about 34 missed calls, several text messages, and I ended up just calling back one person. And I told them, what I had done and that I wanted to go back, and they asked if they could come with me, and I said yes. So I go back to the area and I walk up to the field, and as I told you before, it was actually that first day and the second day, it was just raining really, really hard. And so we get up to that space and you can see footprints in the mud. And so I just said, okay, I'm just prepared for whatever is about to happen next. So I walk a little bit in the area and I just was like, nah, he's not over here. And the person that I was with asked me, how did I know that? And I said, I don't feel like he's over here. And also, like, there was birds like flying in the area, and they were not circling, they were crows. And it's like they tend to kind of circle, and swoop down in an area if there's a corpse or if there's, anything dead. And that wasn't happening. And so diagonal from that area was a body of water. And the person asked me, do you think that he's over there? And I said, no. He said, well, why? And I said, I don't feel him over there. And there's also people that are walking along that area, and, they obviously don't see anything. So I don't feel like he's over there. So the person said, okay. Went a couple streets up, there was another cul-de-sac where this lake and the body of water comes up to this cul-de-sac area. Now, I will mention that this lake that I thought about that night, and that was mentioned to me, this is the same lake. It's in a different city, but this is the same lake. And so, excuse me, go up, don't find anything, don't see anything, go a couple more streets over, same thing. And I'm just getting aggravated because it's like, I know that, I know what I heard, I know what he told me, and he's here, but I'm not finding him. And so I walk up to this creek, and in each area that we were in, it was like a shoreline. And I walk up to this creek in this particular spot, and I put my foot in the water. And when I put my foot in that water, I could just feel him. It was just like electricity. I knew that he was somewhere in this, where the water was running from. He was somewhere in that area. And it was just such a strong feeling. And I didn't want to leave, but I didn't know what else to do because I couldn't find him. So I stood there for probably about 30 minutes just talking to this person. And finally I said, okay, well, I guess I'll go home. So I do. And there's, a couple people there at my door just waiting for me to get home. And so I get there and they're, they have food and they're just sitting with me. And I'm just like, okay, well, I'm just waiting. I wasn't hungry. I just wanted to find out whatever I was going to find out. And surely enough, I get a phone call about 2 hours later, and it is the detectives, and they're telling me that they found a body. And so I said, okay. And I asked, can you tell me what city you found this body in? And they said no. And so I said, all right, well, can you at least tell me if you found this body in or near water? And they said yes. And so I said, okay, that body that you found is my son. And they said, well, we can't confirm or deny, we have to go through our proper procedures. And just, I guess, to protect the investigation, they couldn't tell me even the city at that time. So I said, okay. But when they said, they confirmed in or near water, like I already knew. And so one of the detectives said, they asked me not to watch the press release, that there was going to be one later that evening, and to not watch it. And so I said, okay, well, just read between the lines, it's him. So fast forward to the next day, there were 2 detectives that came to my door, and they were coming to tell me that they ran their test and that it was indeed my son. And so I looked at them and I thanked them. And I told them okay, and they're kind of just looking at me like, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm fine. They were probably just like, what's wrong with this woman? And then I asked them again, I said, can you now tell me what the city was that you found my son in? And they confirmed that it was the city that I was in, that he told me I'm here. So I said, all right. And so they, just go through whatever it is that they're supposed to do, their formations, and gave me like a pamphlet for funeral homes. So they leave, and I go and I sit down on my couch, and it was just like, it was still peace, but there wasn't like a heavy like feeling. It was more so, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about who my son was when he was physically here. And I'm like, this boy is teleporting. He probably done been to Italy and Africa, and he playing with the dolphins, because that's what he would have done. He was always trying to figure out what's next. Like, how can I figure this out? And so I'm like, and he's, in his spirit form now, he's having a blast, And so I said, okay. And so then at that point, I went to go, find a funeral home. And so fast forward, I think that, I'm doing what I need to do. And then I hear, this isn't the one. And I can't remember how, but I found a different funeral home. And I knew it was my son. And I'm just like, well, I need you to tell me why I'm not going with this one and why I'm going with this one. I need confirmation, make it clear and plain. And so surely enough, the funeral home calls me back that I'd reached out to. And the person that calls me back, her name was the same name as his favorite aunt. So I said, okay, this is the right one. And so as we're going through the packets and stuff, she's explaining to me that they do funeral services and they do celebration of life. And I was like, that's why, because that's what he wanted. He wanted to celebrate his life. And so I said, okay. Later on, I did find out that other funeral home, they did not do that. They only did funerals. So then I'm feeling good about this decision, and I'm like, okay, I'm in tune, I'm in line, and we're just going to carry on throughout the process. So going, leading up to his service, there was one of these mornings and I woke up, and this particular morning, I was pondering on my son's death. And I got to physically feel what it felt like for my mind to be focused on that and it translate throughout my body. I tried to get up and my legs were so weak, I couldn't walk. And all I could do was just lay on the floor and cry. My body was aching and I was just miserable. And so I just laid there and I was crying and I was just like, what is going on? I just said I wasn't feeling like this before. What is it? And my inner being said, you were thinking about his death before you were thinking about his life. And I said, oh, okay. So I laid there a little bit longer until I, stopped crying. And I began to just focus again on his life, his smile, how goofy he was. He was always playing pranks. Son number 2 never really got in trouble. And when he did, it was because he was annoying me. He was always just doing the most silly things, playing pranks and stuff. He was just so much fun. And so I started focusing on that and I said, okay. And so as I did, I felt my energy come back and I felt, strong enough to get up and carry on with what it was that I needed to do to prepare for his service. So again, going through the motions during this time, there were people that were reaching out to me. And, I appreciated it, but I had to realize that it was very important at that time to protect my energy because the energy behind their empathy, it was unintentional, but it wasn't what I needed. It was doom and gloom. And just from talking to, a few people leading up to that point, I did realize if I'm not careful, I am going to end up taking on their emotions and what they're feeling when that's not even what I'm feeling. So I knew I can't have a lot of people around me. So I was very selective. And my sister, best friend, she came and she was with me for like a month. And I appreciated her so much because I needed her to answer the phone and I needed her to, answer the door and just tell people, she's not wanting to see people right now. And at the time they didn't understand it. Later on, I was able to explain and they were just like, yeah, that makes complete sense. And so going on through the motions, I needed to clean out my son's apartment. And just again, with the few people that I talked to, they were just like, well, why are you doing that? That somebody else should be doing that for you. And what they didn't understand was I needed to do it because it was part of my process and I was owning what I was feeling. And it ended up being healing for me. I was the first person to step foot in my son's apartment with him when he got his keys. And I wanted to be the last person to leave. And that's what happened when I was there. I was going through his pantry, just cleaning out things, and I got to see, that he was listening. You always wonder if your children are listening to you and implementing things that you're trying to teach them. And while he did have a lot of junk food, he did have some healthy things in there too. The way he organized his pantry was how I would have done it. And it was just really good to see that. It made me feel good and it made me feel happy to see, he was listening to me. And so all the way down to, the cleaning supplies, like he was listening. And so got through that day and, got out all of his things and continuing to just go through the motions to prepare for his service. So we get up to, I think it was about 2 days before his service, and I reached out to the funeral director. Now, leading up to this, I was not fond of her. She just was not my cup of tea. She was just, she wasn't being thorough and she was just dropping the ball with things that I just didn't appreciate. And I was like, you sure? Ask myself, like, are you sure this is right? And he's like, yeah, just trust the process. So I was like, okay. And so I reach out to her and I'm asking her, when am I supposed to speak? Because I decided that I was going to do his eulogy. And she was just like, what do you mean? And I was like, what do you mean? What do I mean? When am I speaking? And she's like, there's no order of service. There's no officiant, you know? And I'm like, what did I pay for? You know, what do you mean? How do you sell a package to someone that does not have an order of service? And so, you know, my sister, love her to pieces. She's sweet as I don't know what. But in this moment, she was upset. And she's just like, I got this, you know, I'm going to handle it. And so I was just like, okay. And so because she is so sweet, it was just kind of funny because I was just uncomfortable around her because I'm not used to seeing her like that. So I was like, I'm just going to go take a shower and calm down. So I went, and got in the shower and just, you know, was just trying to get my zen back. And I am a water sign. So anytime that I am in the water or near the water, I feel very energized and I can hear my inner goddess speak. So I'm in the shower and I hear her. She's like, hey girl. And I'm like, hey, how you doing? You know, whatever. And she's just like, the reason why there is not an order of service is because you are supposed to conduct the service. And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. So I got out of the shower and I was just like, hey, and I'm talking to my sister. I was like, calm down, you know, there's no order of service because I'm supposed to conduct it. And she's like, oh, okay. You up for that? And I'm like, yeah, I got it, girl. I got it. You know, it makes sense. So the next day, you know, people are flying in. It's now one day before the service. And they're just, you know, wanting to come and make sure I'm okay. And I just asked her, like, can you please just, you know, tell them I'm fine, but I need people to just stay away because I need it to be silent. I need to focus and, you know, get things together. So I sit down, it's quiet, and I just begin looking back at our messages over the past month, my son number 2 in my text messages. And so in that, I was seeing several little, I guess, signs. And it was almost like he knew that he was going to pass. It was very subtle goodbyes in those messages, because I was wondering, like, what music do I play? Like, what do I do? And he had happened to send me his favorite song. And the message was, Mom, and very, very random, out of nowhere, just said, Mom, this is my favorite song. He said, I like this song because it brings nothing but good vibes. You can't help but to be happy listening to this song. And so I was like, boom, there's the song. One of his other messages, and this is one that I chose to frame, and I look at it, you know, every now and then, but it says, I love you, Mom. Thank you for everything. And there's a heart next to it. And so I'm just like reading this and I'm like, oh, okay. And again, becoming the observer, looking back at things, I was able to just kind of see more and more. And as I sat there, I was thinking back to when we were cleaning out his apartment, and I realized he had bought his fiance all of her Valentine's Day presents. Now, when my son passed, that was January. Valentine's Day is not till mid-February. But it was like he had bought her, like all of these things as if he knew he wasn't going to be there. And I was talking to her and she was just like, yeah, she's like, you know, that weekend, it was just the way things were done. They had gone on, you know, a couple of dates and everything. And she just said everything was just very, very easy, very peasy, very peaceful. And so I was just thinking about all that and, you know, creating the content to prepare for his service. As I sat there, I was going through pictures, and I have like a box of pictures, and I found one of them, and it's significant because his picture was laying on top of my grandmother's picture. Now, my grandmother is also no longer with us physically, and the picture was of her laying in a casket. And the way my son's picture that was on top of her picture, it was almost like he was in her arms. And I looked at that and I was just like, oh my gosh. And I heard, he's with me. And I said, wow. What's also very significant about that is that son number 2, the son that passed, and my grandmother share the same birthday. So I was just like, thank you. And it was like all of these things were just giving me the energy, letting me know like you're on the right path, you're gonna be fine. And so I said, okay. And so going through some more things, I end up picking up his natal chart that I had printed out for him several weeks before that, maybe 3 weeks before all this happened. I gave him a copy and I kept a copy. And as I'm going through his natal chart, it's like I'm reading everything about him, but I was able to pair like just different life events to his natal chart, and it was exactly who he was physically as a person. And so right then, right there, I had everything that I needed to piece together, his eulogy and his order of service and everything that needed to happen for that day. I ended up picking the officiant, which was a family member, one of his favorite uncles. I picked the person who I wanted to sing, which was a very close, dear friend of his. And just even etched out the times and, the poem readings. I ended up pouring out libations and calling out to the ancestors and all of the things that, I felt would have been appropriate to celebrate his life. It is significant that I mention also, I had always claimed to not be a public speaker. I was just very shy and just not wanting to be in front of people for whatever reason. But I would always say that I'm not a public speaker. And as this, as the time would go on, leading up to his service, there was so many instances where I was being put on the spot virtually to speak in front of people. And I'm just like, okay, like, what are you preparing me for? And it was kind of funny because it was like practice. And one of the lessons from Comedic Centered Living, he talks about you going through different life situations and sharing your story with people, because it's not just your story. You go through it to share so that you can help someone else. And he said the very thing that you are running from is going to be your breakthrough. That's what you're supposed to be doing. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I don't run from anything. Like, what is he talking about? And I was just like, oh my God, I so run from that. And so as everything is evolving and taking place, I just giggled to myself because I'm like, yeah, you're supposed to speak publicly at your son's service. And I was like, okay. And I was going to do it. I was very determined that I was going to do that. And so I get through the day, I write it, everything is just wonderful. I send it over to the funeral director and everything falls in place. So the day comes where it's time to speak in front of everyone for my son's service. And I walk in, I look at everything that I've given her. One of his favorite things was Monopoly. He loved Monopoly. He was very competitive and, in your face, and we're gonna play, and just that was his thing. So I got to see that on the memorabilia table. He loved Gushers. They were spread throughout the table, just as, things to be able for individuals to take with them, when they left. And when everyone came, when I'm sending out the invitations, I asked them to dress as if they were going to take one last picture with my son, because we were celebrating his life, and that's what he would have wanted. The type of person, again, that he was physically was just happy. He was happy all the time. And you didn't come in contact with him and leave the same. So you either left laughing or smiling, because that's just, who he was. And so the day of the service, it was beautiful. There were individuals that came from 6 different states to celebrate his life. And just looking around the room, it was just like you could see just different stages, from preschool to kindergarten to middle school till high school, even up until his adulthood. All of his jobs that he had, just being at his tender age. HR was there. They came to, give their condolences, and everyone that spoke talked about the connection that they had with my son, and was looking at me and thanking me for raising the type of person that he was. And that just gave me so much joy, and it's just like, how can you be sad about this? Because, you were part of their experience. Your son gave them something, and they're here to celebrate that. One of the songs that I ended up playing at the end was a song that he wrote for me when he was 11. And ironically, the name of that song was Time to Celebrate a Great Day. And so I'm just watching all of this play out, and I'm just like, this is so amazing. And I'm just honored that it's, part of my journey. So I get up and I'm a little nervous because, like I said, this is my first time speaking in public. So I was just like, ugh. I had my little note cards and I'm like ready. And I get up there and all of that just melts. It just goes away. The anxious feeling in my stomach melted away. And I just speak. And I speak from my heart. And I talk about my son and I talk about his life. And I give little stories and things that happened, and how he was trying to protect me sometimes, and I felt like his kid at sometimes, and I'm like, I'm the mama, and I could just tell that I was really connecting with everyone that was there. And so as I got through, everything that I needed to say, I could see my son, and he was right there, just sitting in the crowd. In life, he was my biggest cheerleader, and anything that I said that I was going to do or I was trying to do, he would say, "You got this, Mom, you can do it," and just anything that he could do to contribute to help that happen, he did. So as I finished, it was like he was just sitting right there in the crowd and he was saying, "Yay, Mom, you did it. You finally did it." And I was just like, wow. And it just brought me so much joy in that moment to experience that. And even tearing up with you now, it's just, I'm so happy to have gone through this, because it just changed things for me in such a positive way. And so, fast forward, you're going through the motions and, you're telling everybody bye. And there's so much still going on getting through this process. But finally, everybody goes home and it's quiet and it's silent once again. And that in and of itself is such a gift because you're able to reflect back and see, what has transpired and what has taken place. And so as I sat there, I just was combing over everything in my mind. And what came to mind was how grateful I was for KCL's content, because it was fine-tuning my inner being and my guidance system to listen. And had I not listened, I realized, I wouldn't have got to see my son that day, right before he was taken, had I not listened. I want to recall your attention back to what I was talking about as far as, that lake goes. It was later on revealed exactly where they found him. And when I went back to visit, I ended up understanding he did not want me to walk up on his body and see him like that, because the last memory that I have of him is going like this and smiling at me. And so when I went to the location, I realized where I was looking for him was diagonal from where he was. So the shoreline where they found him was, if I had just walked to the shoreline and looked diagonal, I don't know if I would have seen him, but that's where he was. And so when he was telling me, I'm here, he was there. And so again, all of this confirmation just comes from tuning in and from listening and being in tune with your inner goddess or inner God or your higher self, whatever you want to call it. And there was just so much gratitude that came over me. I also realized that, like I told you, it's significant that I was, making it very prevalent that it was raining so hard those 2 days. For whatever reason, it's not logical, he did not wash out to the lake where they probably would have never found him. He stayed right there in the shoreline where he was placed. And even more gratitude came over me. Not to give too many details about, the situation because it's still going on. But this person that took him, they have everything that they need in order to do whatever it is that they need to do. But because of what else happened with this person, it was almost like my son was a sacrifice to stop this person and to for them to have everything that they need to get to this person from continuing on with what they were planning and what they were doing. Again, grateful to be able to see it like that, because that's what he would have done. He would give you the shirt off of his back. Anything that he could have done to intervene, he would have. And then also, this was the most significant to me, and what I was so grateful to be able to see, again, because my perspective has changed from the polarity I chose, was I thought about, when a child is conceived, they're conceived in water, they're in amniotic fluid, and they go through the birth canal, the portal, and which is you, the mother. And then when they're born, the first thing that a mother does is hug her baby. Y'all, had I not listened, I was able to see my son right before this happened. So he hugged his mother. He returned to the portal from where he came. And for whatever reason, when this guy took him, he laid him in the water. So he was returned back to the water from whence he came. And I just sat there like, my goodness, and tears of joy just pouring out of my face, because I'm like, thank you for this experience. Thank you for me being able to see, how symbolic all of this happened and how it all transpired. And so my point to all this is, everybody needs fine tuning. Your car needs a tune up. If you're trying to work your muscles out, you need protein to feed it, to enhance your muscles. What are you doing to prepare for a test? What are you doing to prepare for a life marathon? So many times we prepare for happy events. We're preparing for birthdays or weddings or whatever, and those are happy events. But it's kind of like an oxymoron, because it's like, this is something that's very difficult, one would think. So what are you doing to be in the right place mentally and emotionally? Because, it's inevitable. We're all going to face death. We've all faced death in some way, shape, or form. But what are you doing to be able to prepare yourself to be ready to get through that period or through that process, and how you're going to handle it? I like to give analogies to be able to kind of piece together, what it is that I'm trying to convey. And I know different analogies just, kind of land differently with different people. So I'll give you a couple. First off, I do want to say, as human beings, and we're spiritual beings having a human experience, we tend to be guided by everything outside of us. And that's so ironic, because when we're born, we're born with an inner guidance system. That's why we cry when we're hungry. That's why we cry when we're wet. We don't know all that. We're crying because we need something. We need to be held. And that's what was with us. But it's like we grow, in this third dimension, and we get away from that inner voice, or what we say, something, and we follow everything else. We're programmed to follow everything else, whether it's what someone says or going with the crowd, or just to be literal, a navigation system. You'll pay attention to that. You'll pay attention to a compass, and you won't listen to your own guidance system that is within you. Why is that? It's like we've got to get back to that, because things like this happen and it's just unexplainable. You're following your intuition beyond logic, and when you do, it's just miraculous. The analogies that I want to give is, again, focusing on your third dimension, or 3D, or the physicality of things. So say you're a writer, you're a dancer, or whatever it is that you do. You have to nourish your body. You have to eat. You need to get nutrients from food to be able to carry on with whatever it is that you do. So if you think about a meal, you consume that meal. So it's physically not there. You've eaten the meal and you've consumed it, and whatever the nutrients or protein or fiber, whatever the meal was going to give you, it's now within you. So you can't physically see it, it's within you. That's the same as our loved ones, that ascend. We can't physically see them anymore, but whatever it was that we were supposed to consume from them, whether it was an experience, whether, it was, how you watch them treat someone, lessons that you learned from them, you've consumed that from them. And so now it is your job to go out and each one teach one, give what you consume, so that they live forever, that you spread that message throughout, eternity. That's what we're here to do. Another analogy that I like to give, and that I gave at a service, was a balloon. while balloons are here, like you have to blow air into a balloon, and then the air takes the shape of the balloon, it takes form. And while balloons are here, it's typically a happy event. It's a graduation or it's a wedding or whatever. But then when the air comes out of that balloon, it's just a balloon, like a corpse. But the air that was in that balloon, it's surrounding you. It didn't go anywhere. You can't see it, but it's there. You know it's there. So that's another, just analogy that I like to give, and just want you to ponder and think about that. And when you're, studying or just applying different things, or just, trying to really pick up what I'm saying, think about those things. Another, and it's not an analogy, but it's just something that I shared with son number 3, as he's going through this process and, just really trying to make sense of things. This particular day, we were by a large body of water. Son number 3 is also a water sign, so he finds joy in doing those same things. And we were at this beach and we're sitting there, and he tells me, he says, Mom, he said, I'm upset. And I said, well, what are you upset about? And he said, well, I'm upset with my brother, and I don't want to be. And I said, well, why? Tell me what's going on. And he says, well, what happened to him, he said, it happens to people all the time, and they live through it and they come back. And he didn't come back. And so I said, okay. And so I just sat there for a second, and I looked at him. I said, can I ask you a question? And he said, yes. I said, okay. Named his best friend. I said, you and your best friends, you've been friends since the 4th grade? And he's like, yes. I said, okay. I said, typically, in elementary school, the big not finale, but what you're basically waiting for every day is to go to recess, right? And he's like, yeah. So I said, okay. I said, life is full of tests. I said, so if you and your friend were in the classroom, and you had to take a test, and the goal is to get to recess, but you can't get to recess until you finish your test. I said, are you going to be mad at your best friend if he finishes his test before you? And he goes, no. I said, well, why not? He said, because he's probably at recess. And I was like, right. I said, so the goal is to get to recess, right? And he's like, yeah. I said, okay, so guess what? He's like, what? I said, your brother. I said, he's just at recess. And he looks at me and he's just like, wow, you're right, Mom. He's just at recess. So it's all about a polarity that you're going to choose that will frame your perspective and dictate your reality. I am telling you all these things because I want you to ponder on that. The world is in a very, very different place. And it's really going to take us thinking differently in order to change something. You got to do something different to have a different outcome. And so, the point behind sharing this content is just so that you can do that. Again, talking about the content, it just fine-tuned what was already there in order for me to be able to have this perspective. So I am going to go ahead and end this video on that note. And I just want you again to ponder and keep in mind that it is your polarity that you choose that dictates your perspective and will change your reality. Okay? Until next time, Comedic family, ta-ta for now.